all these nations lining up prophetically. That prophecy from Ezekiel was over 3,000 years ago. And again, it's a sneak preview of a coming attraction, a harbinger of what is to come. Shalom, shalom. We are in crazy, crazy times. I want to talk with you about some key events that are going on in the Middle East. I want to talk to you briefly about the key time that we're in on the biblical calendar and why everything we see going on in the Middle East, and maybe even why some of the things we see going on in the United States and in the world are happening at this time. And I definitely want us to pray together, because now more than ever, we need to pray. But I'm excited to be back with you. So I just want to take a moment, understand we're in this key time on the Hebrew calendar known as Bein Hametzarim. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means prophetically, spiritually, what this time on the Hebrew calendar is. And I think it's this time known as between the Dire Straits, or between the narrow straits. It's this 3-week period between the 17th day of the Hebrew month of Tammuz and the 9th day of the month of Av. And we'll see this is important spiritually, prophetically, but also even with the potential attack on Israel coming from Iran and her proxies. So this is a time in history where terrible things have befallen the Jewish people. The first temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. The walls of Jerusalem were breached before that. Even the Inquisitions, the beginning of World War I that led to World War II, some things that were key events during the Holocaust, all happened during this time. We'll get more into that probably next week into the specifics. But this is a time of mourning. This is a time of attack on God's people. This is a time of tragedy. Historically, on the Hebrew and on the biblical calendar, just think about it. This year, during this 3-week period, we had Israel, a little bit of background to where we're headed to, because of what happened on October 7th and the murder of 1,200 innocent Israelis and many more injured and soldiers killed. Very tragic events that have gone on since that time all the way around. Many innocent people have suffered on both sides. But Israel did a targeted hit on the second in command of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And then within an 8 to 10 hour window, they turned around. And as the new president of Iran, at his inauguration, the political head of Hamas, as many of you know, Ismail Haniyeh, went there. And he was being held in a Iranian safe house. Israel, although they haven't officially claimed responsibility for it, it's believed that Israel took out Ismail Haniyeh in an explosion. No one thought it was possible. And because of that attack on Iranian soil, Iran has promised to a direct attack on Israel for retaliation for that attack on Iranian soil. And I think Iran feels it looks weak and it needs to show that it has strength, that it doesn't want to lose face among all the allies of the Iranians. And so they're threatening both them and their proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen. We have a terrorist group funded by them in Iraq and in Syria. It's this ring of fire that surrounds Israel. They're threatening this attack, and I think it is no surprise that it is happening at this time. As we said, it's happening in this period known as the Bein Hametzarim, which literally means the time between the narrow straits or the dire straits. As we said, it's a 3-week period, a 21-day period that begins on the Hebrew month of Tammuz, and it culminates on the 9th of Av, which is the most tragic day on the biblical calendar, which starts Monday night, August 12th, until sundown, August 13th. And Iran has said, whether they're just putting it out there as psychological warfare or they're actually serious, no one knows yet if that is the actual day. But that is the day that Iran says so far in the media that they are going to attack the Jewish people, because it is a day of tragedy, it's a day of destruction, it's a day of loss of life. And so Iran's saying, listen, we're going to truly make it another day of tragedy on your calendar. And so you can see why they're picking, or at least why they're saying they're choosing that date. So understanding the significance of that, the term comes from the book of Lamentations, where it says in Hebrew, Echa, where it says, all her pursuers overtook her, Bein Hametzarim, between the narrow or dire straits, between the tight place, a place where there seemed there was nowhere for Israel to run, nowhere for them to escape. What's interesting is that the word Hametzarim comes from the word sar, which, yes, means a place of tightness, a place of confinement, a place of restriction. But the word also can mean in the Bible, enemy or adversary. So the enemies or adversaries of Israel, the greatest of today, which is Iran, is threatening to attack Israel on this day, a time of national tragedy, a time of these 3 weeks or 3 weeks of mourning on the biblical on the Jewish calendar. You don't shave, you don't listen to certain, so my beard grow. You don't listen to certain music. There's a number of different restrictions during this time, as it is a time of mourning in traditional Judaism. So what's interesting is this, right? Is that I think this ties in. We're going to look at a key number, but I also want us to think about this for a moment. Really, I think what we're getting prophetically here is a sneak preview or a harbinger or a leading into, at some point in the near future, though I don't think this is that yet, the war of Gog and Magog that we read about in Ezekiel 38. This is what we read. And thus says Adonai Elohim, behold, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tuval. I will turn you about and put hooks in your jaw, okay? And then it says this, Gog and Magog with Persia, Cush, and Put. So these are the nations that are going to attack Israel. Well, what are those modern day nations? So what we see is many Bible scholars, many prophecy scholars believe Gog and Magog and even among the rabbis, is believed to be Russia. So, and then Persia is Iran. So it's interesting that today Russia and Persia are aligned. In fact, Russia is bringing arms into Iran. They're helping with, they're sharing drone technology. Iran is giving drones to Russia to fight against Ukraine. That some of the leadership of one of the key leaders in Russia, I think it was the Ministry of Defense leader, just left Iran to go back to Russia, but was there for meeting at the same time. The U.S. military heads of CENTCOM were meeting in Israel. Russian military advisors and leaders were in Iran. So you see like prophecy beginning to line up. Iran, Russia, the third is Turkey. Turkey recently in the last week has threatened to go in to invade Israel. They have one of the largest armies in the world and a way more sophisticated army than Iran. So you see how this is all lining up, and with Sudan and Libya. So those aren't playing a major role yet, but Yemen is in North Africa, and you have the Houthi rebels there. So you have in that general vicinity, all these nations lining up prophetically. That prophecy from Ezekiel was over 3,000 years ago. And again, it's a sneak preview of a coming attraction, a harbinger of what is to come. But what I find really interesting is this, and this is again, words matter, names matter. What's interesting is that biblically, Iran was named Persia. But in 1935, Iran officially changed its name from Persia to Iran. And many people don't know this, but Iran actually comes from the term Aryan. The Iranians believed that their history and their heritage was Aryan. Aryan comes from the word meaning noble. What's interesting is that they did this in 1935. So as the racist ideologies of the Germans are coming to fruition and they're claiming to be Aryan, the Iranians say, we are the original Aryans, and they adopted the same term that the Nazis use to describe themselves as the ideal race. Come on. Iran are the modern day Nazis. Iran is Persia. It's where Haman, the first person that wanted to commit genocide against the Jewish people in the scriptures, in history, comes out of Persia. Persia becomes modern Iran. Iran is Aryan. And today they are trying to continue on and to make a reality what not only Haman, who was the descendant of Amalek, the first person to attack the Jewish people when they came out of Egypt, whom God says, I will always be at war with the descendants of Amalek, killing the women, the children, and the weak and defenseless when Israel came out of Egypt. And Haman was a descendant of Amalek. But in a sense, the Iranians, by naming that Aryan, not the only reason, but in some way, no matter how much they meant it, understood it or not, it is clearly today that the Iranians are claiming a link to continue and finish what the Nazis tried to do. Friends, that is no coincidence. That is no mistake.